It was in 1991 that the government began the exercise to divest a stake in the public sector. Since then, the business of disinvestment has traveled through a tortuous path of trenchant opposition, scandals, political uncertainty, and general confusion. Perhaps no issue has better credentials than India's disinvestment experience to serve as a kicker for a new news-based program called Follow Up. This program stems from the belief that the real news lies in following up on key events that people have largely forgotten. We believe that the big news sometimes lurks around these forgotten themes. Disinvestment debate is vibrant and rages fiercely, but there are important aspects pertaining to this issue that have either been forgotten or plain ignored. Now fewer people pose this question, why government is disinvesting public sector companies, and more that are concerned about how it is being done. Whatever may be the trajectory of inquisition, public sector disinvestment instills fear and anxiety in the minds of those whose lives, politics, and business have been anchored in country's socialist past. A coalition government probably best expresses this tension. Take a look at the Council of Ministers. It has former socialist, economic nationalist, or plain pragmatist. All want public sector to stay in some form or the other. On the other side of the divide, there are liberals who want the government to get out of business. Cabinet meetings have been stormy and the government has looked very shaky. But how serious have been the differences?
When I sit in meetings in the government, I find a complete unanimity on the concept of disinvestment. There is a complete unanimity on that score. There are always two views, which is the company to be taken up first. Obviously, all companies can't be taken up in the same go. Which can be left out, which is of greater importance, which we need not take in at the moment, which is of a greater importance to take over today. And in any government, there are bound to be discussions. In fact, if there are no discussions and no two views, it will be a case of non-application of mind. So when I sit in the government, I don't find differences in approach. There are always good constructive suggestions. But when I read the newspapers, I read a lot more about the differences, which I don't find which are actually existing.
Other members of the Council of Ministers like Petroleum Minister Ram Naik, Industries Minister Manohar Joshi, and Communications Minister Vilas Paswan have proved to be more recalcitrant.
हम नहीं चाहते हैं कि कोई भी पब्लिक सेक्टर जो है घाटे में चले और सरकार के ऊपर में उसका अतिरिक्त बोझ डाला जाए, लेकिन हम ये भी जरूर चाहेंगे कि जो पब्लिक सेक्टर मुनाफा में है और जो भविष्य में भी मुनाफा कमाने का उसका एक फ्यूचर है, तो उसको उसके संबंध में भी अलग से विचार करने की आवश्यकता है. अब कभी कभी तो हम अपने स्वयं कंफ्यूज्ड हैं.
राष्ट्रीय स्वयंसेवक संघ (RSS), Swadeshi Jagran Manch, and the Bharatiya Mazdoor Sangh have all expressed unease towards economic reforms program. RSS has even described government economic policies as against national interest and even suggested US pressure behind the reforms.
जिस संदर्भ में और जिस तर्ज पर, जिस स्तर पर और जिस मानसिकता जैसे ये किया जा रहा है, हम उसे उचित नहीं मानते, हम उसका विरोध करते हैं, क्योंकि ये देश के लिए हानिकारक है. उदारीकरण का अर्थ अगर व्यापारीकरण हो गया है, तो आज तो उसका विरोध और भी मुखर है.
The fundamental question is, why do people have misgivings about disinvestment? Our recent history provides some inkling of this disquiet. In 1991 again, political instability and a war in the Gulf region had triggered a major financial crisis. There was not even enough foreign exchange to buy a month's supply of fuel for the country. Yashwant Sinha, the finance minister in Prime Minister Chandrasekhar's government, was compelled to mortgage India's gold so that the country did not default on its international commitments. Bankruptcy was staring the government at its face at that point of time. Congress rose to power on the issue of stability, mortgaging of gold, and Rajiv Gandhi's assassination. Immediately after being sworn in, Congress unveiled its new economic policy, which abolished industrial licensing and redefined the role of the state in economic development. Many believed that IMF, World Bank had arm twisted the government into changing its economic policies. Disinvestment of public sector, in their view, was a bitter pill the government was compelled to swallow. Prime Minister Chandrasekhar lent a touch of mystery to this controversy when he claimed that his bureaucrats hid from him details about the new economic policies.
I think at least the time when I had to do something with the government, we did saw that we shall not submit to the outside pressure. Now what happened after that, I don't wish to go, it is very well known. But one thing is clear, that once this decision was taken, it was taken within a week's time of the new government getting in. It was never discussed in Parliament, it was never discussed in the Cabinet, it was never discussed in the ruling party. It was a decision which was by and large ready-made.
I don't share the view that the process of economic reforms began at the behest of the World Bank or the IMF. Actually, during the later years of the 1980s, there was a lot of thinking in government that we have to change. So the internal thinking about the need for reform was there even before the crisis of 1991. It's true that we ran into a crisis in 1991, and if we had not implemented these reforms, we probably would not have got any assistance. But it's not correct to say that internally we were quite happy with the way policies were going. And the fact is the policies had led to a crisis, so they needed a change.
The structural adjustment program changed the nature of government. Instead of being the prime investor, it became a facilitator of development. Controlling fiscal deficit became the reason for limiting the role of the government. PSUs no longer occupied the commanding heights of the economy. Their performance was now to be judged on the touchstone of profit. Earlier yardstick of balanced regional development and generating employment was thrown out of the window. It will be interesting to recall the reasons why PSUs were set up in the first place. They were supposed to help in the growth and industrialization of the country, create infrastructure for economic development, earn returns on investment and generate resources, promote redistribution of wealth and income, create employment opportunities, save foreign exchange by import substitution.
The cause for the non-performing of the public sector has not been by its own nature, and especially when it is to be judged in terms of profit. As a student of economics, any graduate student will tell you that if there is a monopoly, monopoly can never be under loss. And public sector in India has been having by and large a monopoly position. Why does it go under loss? It can only go under loss if the managements decide not to make profits.
This yardstick of profit for a public sector, I want any self-respecting economist to tell me what is the difference between tax and profit in a public sector. How does it matter whether the finance minister mops up the surplus as a dividend or as a tax? If suppose Food Corporation of India should make the kind of profits that ONGC makes, half of Indian people will starve. So the profit has no meaning, but these are used politically to malign the public sector. In any case, what is being sold off are the highly profitable companies, not the loss-making companies.
Figures indicate that the reality is like a half-filled glass. It all depends on how you look at it, half-filled or half-empty. Taking advantage of an autarkic system and PSU's indifference to profit and quality, a corrupt nexus of bureaucrats, politicians and contractors began to loot this sector. And as this nexus grew in strength, it began to influence politics and policy making. Time and cost overruns in public sector projects gave a bad name to this sector. But it also meant windfall profits for the contractors who were engaged in this. Some of the contractors have become so affluent and powerful that they could well buy some of the PSUs up for sale.
By investing 25%, purchasing 25% shares, you want to become the owner of 10,000 crore rupees. It's a new way of corruption, new way. This is the real motive of disinvestment. Just you spend 25% and you become the owner of 100%.
Government, ministers as well as bureaucrats have a big role to play in the loss-making thing. And there are so many proofs of it that we in fact don't go for it. What we want is to spread information on it so that it becomes public knowledge. I will go specifically into modern, say. In the case of modern, right in the top, bureaucrats and ministers, they have taken flats of lands and plots of lands, and all the travel expenditures and everything is charged to Modern Food. And this is a small company. In bigger companies, it works very different, like Hotel Corporation of India, Centaur Hotel. I have dreams of information on how Centaur Hotel is a den to plunder.
There is a view that the government would have made the same kind of money, if not more, if the PSUs had been restructured than what it is making by selling them. A 3-year pilot project sponsored by a United Nations agency is also trying to find out whether the companies can be turned around with a little managerial help. Results are still awaited. These graphics tell their own tale about the PSUs. The top 10 PSUs clocked a profit of rupees 14,255 crore in financial year 1999 out of a total of rupees 22,509 crore made by all PSUs. Out of 236 PSUs, 100 made losses in 1998 and 62 were referred to the BIFR. Out of these, 32 have been taken over from the private sector. The 10 bottom PSUs incurred losses of rupees 5,580 crores in the year 1999 out of a total of rupees 9,274 crore made by all PSUs. Contribution to the government. The government received approximately 40,000 crores from PSUs in the form of taxes and dividends. But Standing Conference on Public Enterprises scope has definite views on PSU's role in India's development.
There are some loss-making companies, and for variety of reasons they are loss-making companies. And what we've been saying from scope, that let's restructure them and convert them into profit-making companies, and it's possible to do that.
So why did we really disinvest? To finance our fiscal deficit, to make our multilateral debtors happy, or just to make money so that certain social objectives could be met? There is yet another view. It is no longer fashionable for countries to have PSUs.
The rules of the game have changed in the 80s, where all over the world, where two things have happened. Number one, because of technology and WTO, all the world is gradually becoming a global village. Second thing which has happened is that the governments have less money. Third thing, that every stakeholder and every shareholder is asking that whether my asset, whether my money is being properly utilized. And that is not happening in the public sector. And all over the world, the aims and objectives of a government policy are found to be contradictory to the aims and objectives of good business.
There was some logic in raising money by selling a minority stake in the public sector and using those resources in other forms to support other kinds of planned expenditure. I think all over the world, the experience with disinvestment or privatization is one where countries have found that as you move companies out of the public sector and into the private sector with private management, that the performance of the company improves. Efficiency increases, profitability increases.
What is being attempted is that the shareholder, instead of the taxpayer, becomes a private entrepreneur. So an entrepreneur runs the industry and not the taxpayer, because the taxpayer does not have the instrument to control the company to ensure better performance. So what is being really attempted is that sell the taxpayer's share and return the money to the taxpayer.
In 91-92, the first lot of state-owned companies were disinvested. The companies were chosen for both profit and loss-making ones. Interestingly, the first round of sale of PSU shares coincided with the rupees 5,000 crore securities scam. The Joint Parliamentary Committee and the CBI that probed the scam also suspected criminality over the manner in which the PSU shares were auctioned. The scandal, if there was indeed one, proved to be a setback for the disinvestment program. Political instability further put the issue on the back burner. In 1996, the government appointed a disinvestment commission. Its mandate was to monitor and supervise the disinvestment process. Later, the terms of reference were changed and it was merely meant to recommend modalities and extent of disinvestment. In 10 years, the disinvestment program was to fetch rupees 45,000 crores, but the government earned a measly rupees 18 to 19,000 crores.
If you disinvest majority shares, or if you sell ownership, there are any number of studies which will show that you can get 2 to 5 times more. Now if that is so, number one, we brought in less companies. Number two, that we only sold minority shares, and therefore the incomes which accrued to the government were small, and that is why we could not meet the target of 44,000 crores. We did minority sale of shares in IOC, in GAIL, in so many very good companies, high profile companies, profit making companies. Let us look at what happened in those companies. We sold shares worth about 2,500 crores for a total value of 18,000 crores.
After the 1998 budget speech, the model of disinvestment began to go through a serious rethink. During his 1998 budget speech, the Finance Minister Yashwant Sinha expressed government's willingness to give up majority stake from state-run enterprises. Finance ministers announced there would be more strategic sale of PSUs from now on. From disinvestment, the economy had made a quiet transition to full-scale privatization, which also meant handing over management control to the private sector. The first company to come under the auctioneer's gavel was the bread manufacturer Modern Food Industries. Even though the sale was in the air for quite some time, when it actually happened, there was a howl of protest all around.
There has been maximum disinformation on it. Modern Food is one of the companies which has been profit making for most of the years. The sale we came to know from the newspapers on Republic Day, I think. It was the eve of Republic Day that it was announced that it is going to be sold. And these were the two decisions, Indian Airlines and Modern Food. Modern Food 74% to be sold, and this. It came from the news media that this has been done. And the final sale was done on 31st of January with 3 holidays in between. Republic Day, then there was a Saturday, then there was a Sunday.
Fundamental questions have been raised about the valuation of the Modern Foods. By adding up notional worth of land and machinery, detractors of privatization tried to prove that the company had been sold for a song. The sprawling real estate in Delhi, Bangalore and Ahmedabad was never really taken into consideration by the valuators, they allege. Conservatively estimated to be rupees 2,000 crores by critics of this sale, Modern Food was sold for 106 crores only.
In Modern Food, we did sell majority shares. We sold 74% of the shares, and when the global advisors did the evaluation, they thought that the company was worth 28 to 70 crores, the entire company, the entire 100% shareholding. We have sold 100% of the shareholding at an equivalent of 165 crores. So just because we sold controlling share of the company, we have got a good price.
Right now what is happening is a total arbitrary sale of people's assets without any kind of sanction. Some bureaucrat and some ministers who are today, who tomorrow they may not be there, they sit down and decide that so many, that the property built over 50 years will just be dissipated. This is no policy. There must be a clear policy. If there is a policy, one can comment on a policy. But if it is a mafia operation, there can't be any comments on a mafia operation.
If you look at NTC, National Textile Corporation, it has got land worth hundreds and thousands of crores in Bombay. Have you been able to sell it? You see, the government cannot be in the business of closing down industries and selling industries. Government has to be in the business, or must endeavor to be in the business of selling an industry as an industry. When you sell an industry, the successor does not get the asset, he only gets the business.
इस देश की सरकार को बताना पड़ेगा कि 10,000 और 15,000 करोड़ रुपए की मालियत की ये राष्ट्रीय संपदा जो देश की जनता की के पैसे से बनाई गई है, उसे आप 1,000 रुपए के अंदर एक बड़े औद्योगिक घराने को बेच रहे हो, ये देशभक्ति है, ये डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट है, इसको आप इस देशभक्ति कह रहे हो, इसको आप डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट कह रहे हो, इसको आप प्रतियोगिता बता रहे हो, इसको कह रहे हो कि बाजार में प्रतियोगिता पैदा होगी, सरकार के हाथ से प्रबंधन लेकर के व्यक्तिगत हाथों में प्रबंधन और देश की दौलत के ऊपर प्रबंधन व्यक्तिगत इजारेदार घराने को करने का ये कौन सा डिसइन्वेस्ट, ये कौन सा विनिवेश करने का तरीका है? ये देश को विनिवेश करने की तैयारी है.
As this is the first case of privatization, there are genuine fears about how the new owner would countenance the workers. Will the 26% shareholder, the government, allow the retrenchment? And what about reservation for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes? After a paradigm shift, how will the concerns of the old world be treated in the not so sympathetic new world?
When Mr. Manmohan Singh in 1991 signed the structural adjustment loan conditionalities, whatever is happening today could have been understood by a person who understands that. But it was not possible to convince an ordinary worker that this is what will happen 10 years down the line. Today he is feeling the impact. He is realizing it. Tomorrow it will get worse. More people will join. It is a constant race between how quickly do people realize the consequences or how quickly do consequences of irrevocable nature hit.
कि जो SC/ST है, तो अब SC/ST है तो उनका रिजर्वेशन का सवाल है, तो जो पब्लिक सेक्टर्स हैं, गवर्नमेंट सेक्टर्स हैं, वहाँ तो रिजर्वेशन है, लेकिन जिसी दिन वो प्राइवेट सेक्टर में चला जाएगा, तो प्राइवेट सेक्टर में तो ऐसा कोई आरक्षण का, रिजर्वेशन का कोई प्रावधान है नहीं.
As far as interest of the working class is concerned, it is paramount as far as the government is concerned. We don't want to create a state of joblessness in mass. But then we therefore try and determine first, we try to save the unit, we try to improve its performance, and all these steps really go to the interest of the workman. Secondly, when we privatize or disinvest, along with a strategic partner, we come to an arrangement, we have a written MOU as to how the jobs are to be saved, how many can be saved. It's our endeavor to save the maximum, perhaps all. And if that can't be done, we develop a security net by offering a very attractive VRS, which along with the other statutory dues of the workman, gives him a very reasonable package.
Rule of thumb was that those sectors where public sector's countervailing presence was not required were chosen for privatization. Poor financial health and inability to stand up to global competition was the other reason for divestment. This made Air India a fit candidate.
जो इसकी हालत खराब हुई है, उसमें करबजेट का एक इन्होंने वेट लीज पर जो समझौता किया था, उसके चलते 320 करोड़ रुपए गए. फिर लीकेजेस होते रहे, इनस्टेबिलिटी रही है पिछले 5 साल की. जो मैनेजमेंट है, जो मिनिस्ट्री है, वो बदलते रही. और सबसे बड़ी बात ये रही कि जो फ्लीट है उसका एक्सपेंशन नहीं हुआ. पुराने जहाज हो गए, कई रूट्स हमारे कैंसिल करना पड़े जो हमारे प्रॉफिट के रूट्स थे. ये एक्यूमुलेटिंग यानी सब चीज़ों को मिला करके ये घाटा जो है वो 4-5 साल से, लेकिन इस साल हम इसको रिड्यूस करने में कामयाब होंगे इसी फ्लीट के साथ.
That will be a difficult exercise. Therefore, we have got advisors who have experience in 40-50 such deals all over the world. So they will advise us on the shareholders agreement, the weaknesses and the strengths of different alternatives.
The most difficult aspect about privatization is valuation of assets. Fears have been expressed about government's asset being short sold for a consideration and Soviet Union repeating itself. It becomes rather tricky if the company is not listed in the stock exchange. The fundamental issue is, how do you put a value to such a company? Take for example the loss-making Air India. Its worth is being estimated from rupees 8,000 crores to rupees 25,000 crores. No one really knows how global advisors will arrive at the value of its tangible and not so tangible assets.
अब ग्लोबल एडवाइजर जो है वो असेस करेगा, मार्केट को देखेगा, हमारी जो एसेट्स हैं उसको देखेगा, और फिर वो सारी चीज़ें हमारे पास फिर आएंगी, और फिर हम लोग उसको देखेंगे कि हम जो असेसमेंट है वो ठीक है कि नहीं है. फिर कैबिनेट कमेटी ऑन डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट वो देखेगी, और ये एक बड़ा फैसला है, इसलिए इसको फूक फूक करके और ट्रांसपेरेंसी उसमें जरूरी है. पारदर्शिता जो है वो उसका अहम सवाल है.
Telecom, petroleum, petrochemical are some of the sectors where the criterion adopted in the case of Air India just does not apply. Telecom and petroleum are some of the top revenue earners for the government of India. There are fears that disinvestment in these sectors may lower competition and give rise to oligopolies if the shares of these companies are taken over by their competitors. Trade unions like the BMS have alleged that lower price than the market rate is being offered to private sector competitor Reliance Industries in the case of IPCL disinvestment.
What is wrong, if I make a suggestion, what is wrong if you say there will be an open auction for IPCL? Here is the reserve price, you come and start auctioning. Whoever bids the highest, he should be given. What's the problem? It is the most transparent way of doing it. If Reliance or Dow Chemical, whoever says, well, we will pay X amount of money, sell it to him.
All this really takes us to the big question. Can the private sector really deliver? Take a look at their track record. PSU's loss-making companies were mostly bankrupt private sector companies that the government chose to nationalize between 1950 and 1970. Contrary to the impression created by the pink press, private sector has a vat of problems. Most of them are family run and not professionally managed. Brought up on a staple diet of protection and government patronage, they do not show any stomach for competition, and in many cases, they are the first ones to sell their companies and get out of the market. Old Swadeshis still remember, with a hint of sorrow, the manner in which their mascot, Thumbs Up, was taken over by Coke.
There are failures. There are a huge number of successes also. So I don't think we should give the impression that the whole of the Indian private sector is not capable of running companies. Actually, if you look at the record, overall record of private sector running industries is definitely better than the record of the public sector.
A good part of the public sector is what is known as taken over sector. Now, was it that there was some kind of a managerial epidemic that all the blue chip companies of the 50s and 60s went sick and had to be taken over into public sector? Like Burn, Brightways, Burn Standard, Bird, so many, companies. And in fact, if you look at the total amount of money that is locked in as non-performing assets of the bank, it is an enormous figure, 48,000 crores. And a large part of this 48,000 crores of this non-performing assets is due to private sector industries. So this is no argument.
We are saying from scope side that let us allow to be more competitive. That means give us the freedom of operation. As long as they are government controlled and the decisions are taken in the ministry rather than the boards, then naturally you will not expect the commercial type of functioning which you are looking for.
But the key issue is, can the government really privatize the entire public sector in the short run? By the look of it, it doesn't seem to be happening too soon. Therefore, instead of treating them like death row prisoners and snuffing out life before they are hanged, why not revive those PSUs that have the technology and the product mix to stand up to competition and earn profit for the country? See you next week, same time, same place, with the next episode of Follow Up. Thank you.